Within a week, over 20 were dead. People on the streets wore masks, avoided each other. The air was ripe with panic.
Advisory reminding citizens to wash their hands and cover their mouths.
You would shut down factories, you would shut down trade, you would shut down commerce. Everything would shut down.
Death toll from Caspian fever has now reached 107.
The virus continued to mutate and spread.
So some long incubating virus that kills very fast. That's the kind of thing that's going to get us.
It only took a few people on a few planes to spread it around the world.
Cases of the fever have been confirmed in over 100 countries.
Now estimated that 10,000 have died in Mexico City.
Temporary morgues have been set up in the streets of Shanghai.
The Vatican conducted a national funeral mass today.
From Singapore to Sydney, the globe shut down. Farmers wouldn't bring food into cities. Cargo ships wouldn't dock, let alone unload. Billions were on the verge of starvation. I saw hundreds of people die every day. I was immune, one of the lucky ones. It was hard to feel anything. There was too much to feel.
You think about the effect that this kind of disaster would have. Everybody's depressed. What do you do with all the bodies? Are people just going to, take their loved ones to the local park and leave them there?
At that point, cities will be unbearable.
You could see it on people's faces on the street. They had given up. As more and more people died, all services broke down. There were frequent blackouts. And now, connections to the internet were intermittent at best.
Round the world, deaths from the Caspian fever show no sign.
And then one day, the power just went out. The phones, the internet, the whole data network went down. Some said it was a terrorist. Others thought it was the flooding. Suddenly, no one knew anything for sure.
If communication breaks down, rumor becomes the communication system, then a mob psychology takes over.
Collapse is not something that actually happens overnight. It's the result of an accumulation of stresses and erosion of the internal strength of society, so that it just becomes like an eggshell, and one last shock breaks it.
Looting was rampant. Most of the police force deserted. The mayor was nowhere to be found. We waited for the president or the National Guard to appear, but no one came. That's when it dawned on us that the government, like so much else, had failed.
If the world breaks down, if globalization breaks down, then even the capacity of the United States to kind of manage a degraded global environment, I think, will come into question.
What we'll see is the federal government being viewed as something not to be taken seriously anymore.
Reports were sketchy, but here's what I know for sure. The virus continued to spread. India and China had gone to war over water and who knew what else. Millions were dying from famine. The human race was collapsing under its own weight.
By that time, I would guess that we will be seeing a substantial die-off of the human population. Most of civil society will have degenerated.
I was 75 when I walked across that George Washington Bridge. There were no checkpoints anymore. I left with a couple of friends and a dog who had adopted me. Rosie, I called her. She never left my side. But where was I going? I didn't know if Molly was still alive, let alone still on the farm up north. I didn't know if I had a grandson anymore. But that was my hope, that I could somehow find them, or they me.
A few hundred years down the line, they'll look back and say, the Dark Ages began in the 21st century.
Our city, beautiful city, was abandoned. And nature took over quickly, as it always has.
The breakdown would be rather rapid. The flooding of Manhattan would have a real destabilizing effect. The subway tunnels would flood and they would stay flooded. The columns that hold up the streets, they're steel, they will rust, they will corrode. The streets above them start caving in, and lo and behold, we have surface rivers once again in Manhattan.
Nature has that momentum, you see, to take this thing back. Tracks will become like a jungle here. It won't be the asphalt jungle, it'll be the real jungle.
Your big skyscrapers here are well anchored into Manhattan schist. On the other hand, they weren't designed to be waterlogged. It just takes one hurricane to hit New York. Buildings are going to start to get taken out.
And it wasn't just the city. Our whole way of life had crumbled. But I found my daughter Molly and Daniel, my grandson. He was a young man now. Molly's husband, George, had been killed. Both of us were widows now. It is a hard life. The United States is fragmented into a million shards. We're all cut off from each other, each protecting what little we have.
It would be a wrenching transition. It would be a catastrophic transition. It's something we don't want to experience. The Dark Ages were called the Dark Ages for a reason.
I fear that we'll see a world like medieval Europe, where you have feudal states fighting for what remains of a source of water, a source of energy.
We managed to produce our own power and communicate over radio waves. The cities that have endured are now walled fortresses, jealously guarding whatever remains of the computer age.
I'm picturing enclaves of affluence and wealth, but surrounded by vast masses of people who will be barely surviving.
In effect, humanity could very well be in hell, where hell is defined as truth realized too late.
We have had to relearn what we had unlearned centuries before. How to live off the land, how to make do.
I think we'll see a world in which literature, the arts, democracy, those will disappear, largely disappear.
How much of the wonderful scientific breakthroughs of the 20th and 21st century will still be retained? If it's some electronic-based thing, it could all be lost.
My grandson Daniel might never hear a symphony, go to college, or read the books I read. He will never marvel at a right whale, the beauty of a coral reef, or a spotted owl.
If you actually ever get outside and just kind of look at the wonder of the world, it takes your breath away. And I think to think of a world where somehow that is taken away is really sad.
We're going to leave a planet that is so desperately beaten up that it will probably take hundreds of thousands of years to get it back, to restore it. We will have lost so much of our natural heritage.
I can teach him poems and songs.